Welcome to the Ripcord Moment. I'm your host, Joe Seetoo. Today we're joined by Aaron Bergh. He is the founder and owner of Calwise Spirits. They're a boutique custom liquor and spirit company up in Paso Robles and known for specific labels, Big Sur Gin and Axhole Whiskey. Aaron, welcome to the show. I'm really looking forward to our discussion today.
Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to it too.
Absolutely. So, well, let's start with, why were you drawn to the spirits industry in particular? I'd love to hear how you got your start.
Yeah, I got my start back in my college days. I decided to become a hobbyist hooch maker, as some call shooting stew, because you like to consume alcohol in college, and it makes sense to make it yourself sometimes. So I taught myself how to make it. It just started out as a hobby. And then I started realizing, hey, this is becoming more than a hobby. This is becoming a passion and now an obsession. And it just continued as a passion project in college. And then I started to notice that there might be a product market fit here. Spirits, especially craft spirits, have been on the up lately, and especially within the past 10 years, which was about the time when I started becoming a hobbyist, and I realized that it would make sense to turn my passion into a company.
And also, I think, if I understand what we spoke before, your family has some roots related to, to the industry. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so after I became a hobbyist, I learned that my great-great-grandfather, named Bill Keever, lived in northern Minnesota, and he was a moonshiner back during Prohibition. He was a
Really?
logger up in Minnesota, yeah, and he ended up his logging company was sabotaged by some competitors, and it bankrupted him, unfortunately. So
Wow.
he tried to find other ways to make some money, and one
Okay.
way he found was to make moonshine. So
Moonshine.
he built his own still, started making moonshine and selling it, and unfortunately he must not have had very good luck, because he got caught again. He got caught by the feds, and they came into
Oh,
his still house at night. They took an axe to his still, and they hacked it up and filled it with a bunch of axe holes. So hence the
oh my
name,
goodness.
our Axhole whiskey here. That's
Okay.
of my great great grandfather.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you where you got the name from, and so that's a great story.
Yeah.
So you've got the Axhole whiskey, which is one of your, your core products, what you're known for, and then I think one of the others is the Big Sur Gin. Maybe talk to us a little bit about that, but also the overarching theme that you're going with for these, combining, I think, the sort of California feel with your spirits.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's our whiskey, which is our top seller next to our Big Sur Gin. And we call it Big Sur Gin because we're up here in Paso Robles. We're right down the street from Big Sur practically, and it's
Yep.
one of my favorite places in the world. And I traveled there when I was a kid, but when I was going up to college here at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, I would travel up to Big Sur quite a bit because it was so close. And it's such a magical place, and it's my favorite place in the world. And I wanted to make a gin that tastes like Big Sur, and not just taste like any gin, but taste and not just taste like any gin, but not just taste like any sort of beverage, but actually tastes like an experience in a bottle. So the Big Sur gin is made from wine grapes that are grown here in Paso Robles. So we distill the wine grapes, use the spirit base as the base for the gin, and then we infuse it with native plants that actually grow in Big Sur, like white sage and elderberry and bay leaf. So when you drink this gin, even if you're not in Big Sur, when you drink the gin, drinking it makes you feel like you're
It takes you
experiencing
there.
Sure.
Oh, so what gave you this, what inspired you, I guess is a better way to put it, to, craft the spirits that really are experiential as specifically related to where you're living?
I think if you look at every good distiller and every good, interesting, unique spirits category, the one thing they all have in common is they're making spirits that are based on where they live.
Okay.
Look at Scotch, for
Right.
instance. The
Okay.
thing that makes Scotch so unique is there's a lot of peat bogs in Scotland, so that they
Hmm.
use they make logs out of the peat from the peat bogs, and they use that to smoke the barley before they make it into whiskey, and that's what gives Scotch its characteristic like earthy, peaty,
Hmm.
smoky flavor. And you have another example would be tequila. Down in Mexico, a lot of agave grows down in Mexico. It's endemic to the area, and they make that into tequila, and it's what gives tequila its characteristic and a succulent, earthy tequila flavor.
Got it. Okay. No, that makes total sense. But then specifically, one of the things I think that's unique to, your story and even where you live is sort of your extreme climate, right? And so how have I would imagine that I would think initially that would be such sort of a disadvantage to what you do, but yet you've somehow taken that and turned that around into, I think, a competitive advantage. So maybe talk to us a little bit about, about that in terms of, you know, yeah, again, how you're using that to your advantage.
Yeah. Uh, so up here in Paso Robles, I mean, one of the things that people know Paso Robles for, probably the main thing people know Paso Robles for, is we grow some of the best wine grapes in the world here. So our climate, which is really hot in the summer and provides for great ripening conditions for the grapes, but actually cools down at night, so the grapes have a chance to rest at night. It makes for some of the best grapes in the world. And the other benefit that I have is when it comes to barrel aging. So when you put spirit in a barrel, you have a 53-gallon barrel, wood barrel with spirit in it. As the temperature fluctuates, that barrel kind of beats like a heart. Imagine it like expanding and contracting as the day goes by. And
I
because
love
we
that
have
analogy.
such
Beats like a heart. Okay.
yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about, right?
Yeah.
Like it really is. Like if you were to put a time lapse camera on it, like it would
Uh-huh.
it would be like a heart beating,
Okay.
one beat per day, because
Yep.
it expands and contracts, and with our extreme temperature differentials, because it'll be 110 during the day here in the summer, but it'll cool down to 60 degrees at night, which
Right.
is crazy. So as that happens, as that barrel expands and contracts, the spirit actually ages even faster, and it
Quicker.
influences even
Yeah.
more oak into the spirit.
Wow. So that's something that's it sounds like unique to your spirits versus, the, those that are made in other parts of the United States or even the world.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, going back to the whiskey, for instance,
uh-huh.
the actual whiskey, you have a single malt whiskey. Scotch. Usually, if you want a good Scotch, you're having to drink like a 12-year-old Scotch, right?
Okay.
And the reason why you have to wait 12 years is because Scotland, it's always kind of cold there. They don't
Cold
really
there.
have
Yeah.
temperature swings, so they have to age things a lot longer. Where I only need to age mine for 2 to 3 years,
Oh,
and it's just
wow.
as smooth as any Scotch you're going to get from Scotland.
So yeah, it is that. I mean, those are orders of magnitude quicker. It sounds like
Hmm.
within years. And then with regard to, I mean, like you describe yourself as, a California entrepreneur as it relates to, again, you've said I think you liken yourself to being sort of an artist, a bit of a scientist, and a bit of a businessman, all rolled into one. What is it? I mean, I guess why would you describe yourself like that? And talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I that's the whole reason I really went into distilling was I found it was that happy medium between being both a scientist and an artist. And I think the science side is relatively obvious. That there's a lot of chemistry that goes into blending spirits together and the distillation itself. There's a lot of biology that goes into fermentation and managing the yeast and their conversion of sugar into alcohol. So
Hmm.
the science side, I have plenty of opportunities to geek out there.
Yeah.
On the creative side, I'm an artist, so I get to create, I get to blend new flavors together, and it's like being a chef in a way. It's really a culinary art that we're doing here, and business wise, I have to sell people on it. And I have a lot of fun getting out there and doing sales. I love looking at the numbers behind everything too. And
Hmm.
distilling was just, yeah, this happy blend
Sort
between
of.
the
Yeah.
three disciplines.
It sounds like, yeah, it's a great confluence of all these different areas that really speak to who you are. And so maybe we could pivot to more the business side for you. So you started this business, from what I understand, about 7 years ago. Really no family money, where you were able to launch it. So you kind of, how were you able to get the company off the ground and get it to where it is today?
I was very fortunate to go to a great school like Cal Poly. And Cal Poly is one of the few universities in the state, if not the country, that has an entrepreneurship program. And it's called the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And when you graduate from college, most colleges' goal is to feed you into working at a large company. Well, Cal
Sure.
Poly has this alternative route where if you want to start your own company, they're going to empower you to do that out of college. So when I graduated college, I went through this entrepreneurship program, and they helped me get my business plan together, and bring my head down from where it was in the clouds a bit, and help me be a little bit more
Like
realistic.
reality a little bit.
Yes, yes, exactly. And how to put a supply chain together, how to even go out there and do sales, how to evaluate your consumer market.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of help there, and I was very fortunate to go through that program. And because that program is known for being so great, it attracts a lot of investors who are looking for young, fresh startups to
Okay.
invest in.
So that helped you raise a little bit of capital to get going?
Yeah, so I was able to raise a little bit of capital to get going, and then I bootstrapped it from there. I raised a little bit of capital, enough to pay a graphic designer to get a brand designed, enough
Hmm.
to fund creating my first batch. And I actually created my first batch out of another distillery, because getting your own distillery started up takes quite a bit of capital. So I worked with
Yeah.
another distillery, got my product started there, and I basically lived out of my car for the first 2 years, just driving up and down the state, selling my spirits out of my car, and bootstrapping it.
That's amazing, Aaron. Well, and then I mean, at one point, COVID was a big pivot. I think you were having some success. You were in something like 400 stores, and then you had sort of an unexpected event. Walk us through what that was like, and what occurred.
Yeah, so the first 2 years of my company, I spent bootstrapping, and selling my spirits out of my car. And then when I was able to generate some success that way, it makes sense to open up my own distillery. So I got my own distillery, and when I did that, I had to actually give up my distributor license, because I got a distiller's license, and the state of
Mm.
California doesn't allow you to have both licenses. So I had to find a distributor. So I was producing spirits out of my distillery, selling it to my distributor, who would go and sell it to my accounts, which was 400 accounts that included some pretty big chains like Whole Foods and Bevmo and Total Wine. And they were distributing them to these accounts for me. And then when the pandemic hit, they had to lay off about a third of their sales force. My distributor did. And
Yeah.
it was just like overnight, like a switch. I went from making quite a few sales and being distributed throughout the state to absolutely nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. Oh gosh. So that, I mean, that just must have been really heartbreaking and challenging, and which kind of leads me into my next question. Um, what do you find as being the most challenging thing about being an entrepreneur? Um, it, yeah.
The most challenging thing about being an entrepreneur, I think the most challenging thing is, I mean, management is certainly tough, as far as managing both employees and customers. And then
Hmm.
But just being able to read the market, because especially when you're small and you're a small startup like this, you have to be nimble and quick on your feet. You have to see where the market's going and be ready to change, and be able to pivot on a dime.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like flexibility is incredible when you're starting out and you don't have a ton of market share that you can command. That you have to maintain that level of flexibility is critical for your success. And then the other thing, I mean, it seemed like what I was gleaning from is just the fact that you've got to have a lot of grit. When if you're living out of your car, if you're doing those kind of things to get the sales. And let me actually even ask you that, taking a step back and asking you, I mean, you're very young when you started this business. And while you maybe had sort of the textbook learning from college and the programs you went through, there's a lot of difference between that and actually real world. How did you get, people to buy into your vision, into your product when they said, "Hey, here's this nice guy. He looks young, but and he seems nice, but again, he's young. I may not take him seriously, but you knew you had a quality product." How did you get them to buy into what you were selling?
I honestly, like you said, it takes a lot of grit and a lot of trial and error. And the first few people I talked to didn't buy into my vision. And then it's like, okay, if people aren't buying into your vision, maybe you have to pivot a little bit and you have to change your vision a bit. So it takes a little bit of tweaking and just being open to being quick and nimble and learning. And yeah, just honestly took a lot of trial and error.
So it's just learning on the fly, figuring out what was resonating, what wasn't, and changing your messaging to fit the market and to fit the audience. So I love that, Aaron. One of the things that I'm passionate about doing on the podcast is getting real world stories from, in this season 3, we're focusing on the young entrepreneur. And if you almost took the lesson, you've been out there now, you've got 7 years under your belt, like some of the lessons you've learned over these 7 years, what would you say to your younger self, right? In terms of, hey, here's 2 critical things that, you would impart to your younger self to get you up to speed quicker, or that even those in the audience could glean from your experience. What would those 2 bold action items be?
That's a really interesting question, because there's certainly things that I would tell my younger self now, but I don't know if my younger self will listen.
Well, there's that, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the main things, and it sounds so cliche, is it you don't understand how hard it is and how hard it's going to be until you actually get started. Um,
Yeah.
and it's never not going to be hard.
Okay. So, well, if I'm reading between the lines there's no substitute for experience. There's, you know, being, what's the right word? I guess the going back to what you're saying about grit, right, and resilience, like it's going to be challenging, but certainly having the belief that you can do it and just stick to itiveness is ultimately like just reinforcing that would be one of them. What's something else? I think we talked previously about like just your experience in management and how you've navigated some of those, more challenging discussions and how you handle, conflict or challenging discussions. So what have you learned along the way related to that?
As far as management, again, like you just said, there's no substitute for experience, and you're going to fail, and you're going to approach a conversation or a conflict in a way that it shouldn't be approached, and it's going to blow up in your face, and you're going to have to learn to lick your wounds and take the L and figure out how to do it better next time.
Yeah. So if we fast forward, well, I love that. First of all, thank you. Those are really, really good words. If we fast forward, 3, 4, 5 years from now, what's on the horizon for you, for Calwise Spirits? I mean, are you going to be launching a lot of other different, labels within your brand? Are you going to be expanding into different markets? Or are you just going to be really sticking to, right here in California?
I do want to expand again. So, I mentioned before when the pandemic hit, I lost almost all of my distribution. And I, in a way, just kind of hunkered down and circled the wagons and really focused on having a successful direct-to-consumer model outside of my
Okay.
tasting room at my distillery in Paso Robles. And it's been going great for me. It's been profitable. I've kept my business afloat and, actually more than afloat, very successful over the
Yeah.
past few years since the pandemic. And now that the pandemic seems to be winding down and, we might be returning to at least some sense of normalcy, the plan is to get back out there and expand back into the distribution market.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to be very much excited to see, your growth, where the company goes over the next couple of years, and what additional, tasty brands that you come up with inside Calwise Spirits. So, well, Aaron, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule today to share with us, your passion, your business model, and what you're doing in Paso Robles to create more culture and more great experiences for your clients.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on this morning.
Absolutely. So we're going to go ahead and wind up. This is Joe Seetoo from the Ripcord Moment, and we'll catch you next time.